Chapter 21. Never-ending work. After the expedition had left, Oren and I continued our transcribing of the records. I was staying at Oran's while Miram and Etuitude were away. Neither one of us were anxious to return to our lonely homes, so we spent long hours at work and then would return together to Oran's house. The only thing that would bring up our spirits was Elchi. He seemed to grow like a weed, as did his conversation. He seemed to never stop talking. He loved to come to the Hall of Records with us and help. He was still rather young to do anything of importance, but we made him feel like his contribution was great. He loved us to stop and tell him stories of our experiences, especially my experiences as a young thing. He was fascinated that I could have once flown. To prove it, I showed him something that I never revealed to anyone except Oran, the feathers that still remained on the back of my neck. I usually tried to conceal them with my hair or my robe. It was a constant reminder of who I had been and still am. It had been months since the expedition left when we received word from a vessel that had returned from Zaid. A message was sent to us from Miram and Etuitude. Sigund, who was given the message, quickly ran with Elchi to deliver it to us. They didn't surprise us with their arrival. Sigund Erkomo often looked after Elchi while we worked, and since the boy loved to come visit us here, it was not an unusual visit. Elchi ran through the door with Sigund trailing behind and screaming for our attention. "Quick, you have a letter!" Oren and I looked at each other, our hearts both racing. Sigund held a piece of parchment in his hand. "Yes, it is from Miram and Etuitude." We were both so excited that we dashed over to him, practically tearing his hand off to get it. Elchi continued to babble as we both tried to open the scroll. Oren finally gained the best hold and suggested that we be the one to read it. He read it aloud for all of us to hear. Dearest Oren and Esser, we are making great progress here. The ground has been broken and work has begun. You have no idea how much is involved in creating our dream. Our greatest engineers and artisans are working practically all day and night. We thought of you at the ceremony for the blessing of the ground. It was magnificent. It is impossible for us to leave yet. We both have much work to do here. Each of the 3 projects are massive and require a great staff of workers. We have been fortunate to receive the assistance of some of the local people of Zaid, but the instrumental roles are ours. It is because of the enormity of these projects that neither of us can return now, nor should you expect us for some time. Take heart. It is for all of our dreams. We both miss you very much. Pizarro sends his love to you both and Elchi. Elchi screamed at the mention of his name. Oren continued reading. Pizarro has been helping ATLATIA. They have become great friends and hardly ever leave his side. He has, however, been learning a great deal about ships. I really believe that he will someday become a great navigator. Remember, we are with you in your hearts. We hope your work is going well. Perhaps you will finish before us. Love forever, Miram and Etuitude. Oren put down the scroll. I had hoped it was going to tell us that they would soon be arriving home. Me too. I was devastated, as I could see Oren was. Elchi, sensing that something was wrong, came over and took my hand. They aren't coming home? I could see the concern in his face. No, they have a lot of work to do. He patted my hand and said, Don't worry, Pizarro's here. He will protect them. It's probably the only thing that could bring some lightness to this dark moment. Both Oren and I laughed. I gave Elchi a hug. Thank you, my friend. The boy, undaunted by the news, and smiled and diverted our attention to the work at hand, of which he wanted to be a part. Our project is massive, too, isn't it, Oren? He stood next to the computer as if he was ready for work. What a blessing this boy was to us. Since the reconstruction of the fire crystal, trade had flourished in ATLATIA. This, however, wasn't enough for Helm. Since many of the countries with which ATLATIA was trading were far less advanced technically than ATLATIA, he felt that it would be easy to make them a part of his empire. With the power of the fire crystal, he was able to scare some smaller islands to the south of ATLATIA into submission. He created something that had never before existed in ATLATIA, an army. His army consisted of many of the things who were still under mind control with his implants. He had even captured Lemurians who had sought refuge in ATLATIA and had them programmed for his control. He became more and more powerful. Terra had become a playground for Helm. His sights for outer limit exploration had long since vanished. He now directed his energies towards conquering the world. Since ATLATIA had regained his power through the restitution of the fire crystal, his power soared. He had compiled an army that was unsurpassed. His artillery could not be matched by any country in the civilized world. His ego enlarged as fast as his army. He mapped out countries to the south and to the east that he intended to conquer. The country of Og was first on his list. It sat south of ATLATIA. It was a country less progressive than ATLATIA, but with the immigration of many of the Atlanteans who fled the destruction, it was a capable opponent. Helm loved to fight. He knew that with this country he would have just that. He took his army, which consisted of things and Lemurians controlled by these implants, and led them into the foreign land. The Ogians had nothing compared to the lasers of ATLATIA. Defeat was inevitable. Og was the only one of the countries on a long list of adversaries. No country was about to give up their home to this invader. And despite the reputable power of Helm's troops, armies would fight till their death. In Alta, Helm stood before his world map. Each country that he had conquered was designated with a flat flag of ATLATIA. His committee of advisors sat listening to his long-winded meetings. Since he had become more and more powerful, his demands on them had increased. If we install a connector here, he said, pointing to the map, we can reach these countries. It would be easier to create another fire crystal, Amaziah mumbled under his breath. What? Helm yelled at him. What did you say? I said it would be easier to create another fire crystal. Helm thought for a moment. How long would it take to do that? Amaziah, not really interested in the conversation, pulled at a thread on his robe. He laughed at Helm's remark. Don't be ridiculous. You know how long it took us to create the one we have now. Besides, where are you gonna put it? We could mobilize it so it could go anywhere. Amaziah laughed again. You must be crazy. Do you know what would happen if it was attacked? It would explode. So then we would have to make another. Helm pointed to the map. We need to have these countries under our control. With them under our hand, we can control all the trade in the world. We must first use our every resource to leave them in a vulnerable position until we can institute the fire crystal for mobilization. His committee looked at one another in disbelief. The thought of creating another fire crystal, and one that would be mobile, was ludicrous. Amaziah was the only one with the nerve to tell him otherwise. Helm, it is impossible for us to create another fire crystal. Why? We no longer have the assistance of a Tuitude, and I'm afraid without her help, we cannot create another. What kind of scientist are you? Didn't you log all of the information down when you created this one? No, sir, we couldn't. She was very guarded with her information. We could try, but I suspect that our efforts would be fruitless. Helm broke his pointer on the map as he screamed, We must conquer these countries. We will conquer these countries, with or without the fire crystal. Helm tried to get his scientists to create any device that they could to increase their military power. After finally exhausting the idea of instituting another fire crystal, the idea of creating nuclear power was broached. They were quite familiar with it, having worked with Patelin on his nuclear power plants. Although the plants had been destroyed in the massive cataclysms, the plants had been retrieved. Helm immediately began working on another energy source, one that he hoped would surpass the capabilities of the laser. The country that had seemed to threaten him most was Sade. It was an affluent country, and although relatively primitive compared to ATLATIA, it had grown considerably with the influence of the Atlanteans who had migrated there. Their progress seemed to soar. They became the most influential country in the East. Other countries respected Sade, and what it had become. On the other hand, ATLATIA had begun to receive a reputation for being ruthless and domineering, and other countries feared them. They anticipated the day when ATLATIA would begin their siege upon them. The people of Sade were different from most of the other eastern countries. Having progressed both technically and mentally with the help of the new residents, they were fearless of the Atlanteans. The ruler at the time, Prince Alar, was more interested in learning from the Atlanteans and finding a way to deal with them, to keep pace between the nations and to promote trade between their countries. He sent a message off to Helm that he would like to visit the country and discuss possibilities to exchange goods. At first, Helm was pleased by the prospect that Prince Alar would want to visit him. He wanted to send them back a letter stating that his visit would be prohibited. Later, while speaking to Amaziah, it occurred to him what to do. "Are you sure that you don't want to meet with this king?" Amaziah asked him. "Why should I?" Helam bellowed. "I have nothing to say to him." "But if you pretend to take him into your confidence, perhaps you can reach your goal in another fashion." Amaziah stuffed a few grapes in his mouth. "That's it," Helam explained. "What?" "I can reach my goal in another fashion."